Hi, I'm Carolyn Loucks. I'm a designer and set decorator in the film industry.
So, my first question is growing up, what did you want to be?
An actress. And I was an actress in theater school right up until I was about 24. I performed in musicals, and I have a long running dancing career. And so I was always front of house and till I was about 24. And then I realized that I was much more interested in the storytelling that goes on behind the scenes.
How would you say your time as an actress and a dancer impacted you as a set decorator?
Well, I mean, huge amount because I've always been very detail oriented. Um, Theater is one thing. It's usually not enough budget, when you're talking about smaller community theaters, et cetera, smaller professional companies. But when you get into film, all of the details help the actor create their environment. And so often actors don't get a chance to see the sets or to even understand really the world that they're going to be walking into. They're dealing with the script and what they imagine it to be on the script page. But then when they walk onto a set and they can open drawers and see, their personal items being stashed, and they have, if you think back on Finding Forrester, Sean Connery's reclusive writer who had been writing for decades and decades, he was able to open his cabinets and the his desk drawer, and he could pull out manuscripts and different types of paper, onion skin and vellum, and he just loved that. And those are the details that bring a character and a story to life.
When did you yourself first get into set decorating?
I graduated from university and I spent a year living in Europe. And I came back to Toronto, thinking that I wanted to do public relations because I came from a family that didn't believe that you were ever going to make any money or have a career in the film industry or the theater world. And poor you're always going to be poor. And so I came back to Toronto thinking that I would do public relations in an advertising company. um, but I started in stills photography. So I was 24.
Mhm.
I started in stills photography doing like food spreads, and the photographer and the props people were saying to me, "My God, you have such a big eye. You should be doing film." And I was
Mhm.
like, what how could I possibly do film in Toronto? Because this was the beginning of filming in Toronto. At that point, Moonlight with Cher, none of those things had happened in Toronto. So yeah, but I did a Coke commercial and Olympic Coke commercial, and my eyes were wide open. And from there, I went into what was at the time movies of the week, and they were like small movies for film. And I did a small thing called Banting and Best, and it was period, and it was right up my alley. And I never looked back. It was just it was full on. I think I worked for like 3 weeks as a set dresser, and I was on a truck and loading a truck and seeing all of the ins and outs of a hard day. And I moved up to buyer, set decoration buyer, which is another career, and became a decorator very pretty quickly in my career. So,
What does being a set decorator entail?
oh, well. Um, So as I said earlier, everything comes from the script. So the script is basically the map to what a final product will look like. So decorator works with the director and the production designer and really the creative producers. If it's in the case of TV, the showrunner has a lot of say in what they envision their show to look like. And the set decorator, basically from the walls and the floor in, not only provides those pieces. So the piece of art, the vellum paper, or the onion skin typed paper that the actor can pick up and read if they want to. It's not just that. It's the fabric selections on the furniture. It's the buttons in the spaceship. It's the engine in a, you know, a train. Because we create everything from the furniture in the interior of a spaceship to, you know, upholstery of a Victorian settee. It's the gamut. It's the full range. Um, we commission sculptors, you know, to create specific pieces. We create furniture from scratch. We make all of the operational panels you might see in a spaceship. It's a huge job. Not only that, we manage all of the people that physically dress those pieces into the set. We are the department head. We have lead men that make sure that the trucks and the people and all of the equipment that we need to make that, you know, hanging drapes 20 feet in the air is successful. We have buyers that work for us. We have upholsterers, welders, carpenters, painters to make that brand new chair look like it's 25 years old. You know, there are tons of pieces that go into creating a set, and the set decorator is in charge of all of those pieces and the money to make that happen. So a lot of people say to me, oh, so who's the person that tells you how much that set's going to cost? That would be me. Because even though there's an overall budget for a film, or a budget that the producers would ideally like to work towards, you have to be very specific on what a set will cost them and get approval, obviously, before you spend the money.
What would you say is the biggest challenge of your job versus the biggest reward?
I think the biggest challenge is time. We never have enough time to create the vision that we're working towards. So, you know, and I think the biggest reward for me is blowing people's minds when they walk onto a set. You know, I adore the reactions of actors and producers who walk around and see, you know, something that they may or may not have had a very clear vision on until maybe they saw the concept art or the illustrations, and then that becomes 3D for them. It's deeply satisfying.
And you said that your background and your passion for international travel has armed you with a keen sense of observation and attention to the details of the worlds you create. Can you tell me a bit more about this?
Well, I think one of the things that if you plan to become a set decorator, or if you plan to become in any part of the design world in filmmaking, it's not who characters are. I think it is part of their environment. What is the culture that they grew up in? What do they eat? What do they see when they walk down their streets or in their country? What is the weather like? All of those details that you discover when you're traveling. What are the colors of the people in that community or in that life? You know, like India has a different color sense than Pakistan. Malaysia has a different concept of color than the Japanese. You know, every place is very specific, and their culture, their religion, all of those things come into play in your research when you're doing work for whether it's a fantasy film or whether it's a very specific film set in a location. And I find so many people think that it's interior design, and it's not. Interior design is a very specific genre, but what set decorators do is try to create a real world full of characters that are tangible, and research and experiencing those other cultures brings something to your world, you know, when you're working as a decorator.
Mhm. And when it comes to that location and the research aspect, you said that that the best part of your job is the creative aspect, that you enjoy the research. What specifically do you look for when you're researching for a project?
Well, it really, really depends because, like if you were to take, for example, Total Recall, which I did with Len Weissman, the director, and Patrick Tatopoulos, an absolutely incredible production designer. We had two very specifically different worlds. And the well-to-do world, the upper world, was based on the future London. Um, and the underground world was Shanghai. And so what we did was, we were looking at 60 years in the future. We had to look at what the existing architecture is now, then layer that with what the future of that architecture might be, what the population of those specific places might be, everything about that, the language they used, what kind of lighting they used, what was the oxygen and the air quality of the spaces that they were in. Everything of that nature turned into how heavily aged the walls might be in Shanghai, and how dirty and grimy things might be. What was the culture? Um, what was the red light district? What would that all be like? Those things you have to kind of do the research on what's current, where could that go? What would that mean? What would people be eating 60 years from now, and how would they be eating it? So you have to start from something that you understand as a now, so that you can move to the future. Um, or, equally as important, if you were to do something in the past, um, you need to do your research, because so often, films have been made about historical past, but they've been kind of stuck by, well, their version of 1950s hairstyles mixed in with the 1860s, whatever. And so, being as legitimate with the materials that you use, and as much research as you possibly can to create, the voice or the vision of the film that you're making. um you can't do it all, it's not a documentary, but you make very selective, specific choices. And how you do that research, my God, it's so changed from when I started in the business to now. I mean, what would we do without this machine? um but it still doesn't replace actually traveling and seeing those worlds and eating that food and feeling those textiles. You really need to do that.
What's the first thing you do when you get involved with a project? And then walk us through the process of being part of a project as a whole.
Wow. You don't ask tough questions. So the very first thing you do is you read the script. You read the script probably about 3, 4 times. The first time you just read it straight through, absorb it. Then the next time you read it, you're picking out very specific. For me, I read the second time looking for the what's the new, what's the unusual, what's the most challenging. Um, what are the things that I'll need to get answers on right away? And you break down the script, um, very specifically, set by set, the characters, who they are, the places, any description that comes out of the script. You break down everything from like the props. Even though I'm not the prop master, I break down the props as well, because it's a key to how those props may be set up within a room. Vehicles, animals, all of those things provide clues to what your sets need to look like. And so that is your footprint. And from there, you talk to the production designer and the director. And in television, there are tone meetings and there are concept meetings. In feature film, it's a different process, but intrinsically it's kind of the same, where you are speaking set by set of where you envision this to be. Is it going to be built in a stage? Is it going to be at a location? And by and large, if it's in a location, it's a very set deck heavy. It won't be necessarily something that is construction heavy. It may be entirely set decorations. So, and you start to get a vision of what the colors are, the story arc in terms of, color and light tone. You talk to the DP as well when they become involved. Set decorators are very much involved with the director of photography. It's crucial because nowadays most of the lighting is done through practical lighting. And so it's all keyed off of the color and temperature of the light source. So those are early on discussions, and it starts to, mesh together a vision of what that's going to be. And the production designer and the director have had many conversations before the set decorator starts. I usually start a couple of weeks after. In feature, it could be like a month after a production designer, or 2, depends on how big this world is, because they could be spending a few months with concept artists to come up with ideas of what that's going to look like, so you can show the studio, so the money gets approved, et cetera, et cetera. But for me, I'm probably at least 2 to 3 weeks after the production designer, who has by then had daily conversations with the director, so that they are really tight on where this is all going. And I sit down with production designer and we go through set by set by set and discuss what the tone is, how that connects from the scene before and the scene after. And from there, I start putting together mood boards of what I think those sets will look like. The specific furniture pieces, the textiles, the textures, environmental fabrics, depending, if it's sci-fi, lighting. I start to put together boards, and I go through those with the production designer. Then we take them up to the director when they're approved. Then we have to go through like budgeting, etc. And this is not just like one thing and the next thing and the next thing. It's all kind of happening in an organic way. And you have to put a budget together, and you have to do a labor budget to how many people and who are these people that are going to be doing the job, and how many set dressers and how many trucks and all of that kind of stuff. It's a mammoth job. It's mammoth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then finally the day comes that you get to dress the set after you've been visiting your manufacturers, watching all of your fabric, your furniture pieces coming together, your control room sets being built, and all of those buttons and technology is coming to life. You get to assemble it all on a set. And to me, that is very satisfying, because it's the physical embodiment of something that you've already put together in your brain. And so seeing that is great. But then, like I said before, having people respond to it and be super excited about it. And so often I've had the experience that directors come in and rethink some of their shots, because there's so much detail that they want to capture that they didn't think that they would have that much detail to shoot around, so they want to capture it all. And that's really, really gratifying.
What's it like seeing the final product for the first time?
Like I said, I've been in the business 35 years and I've never gotten tired of it. There's lots of types of sets that I have no interest in ever doing again. And I pick my projects to be challenging for me, so I did Midway. That was all shipbuilding and, the USS Enterprise and recreating that on a stage. That was incredibly interesting. And I had some, super talented team that knew how to source vintage military, naval equipment, like crazy radar, the original radar machines. And that's having people walk onto those sets and really believe that they're on a ship, like really feel it, feel the claustrophobia and feeling like they smell all the stinkiness of being on a ship and everything. It's just great. It's really great. Yeah.
What's it like working on movies versus working on television?
Time is the most precious commodity in the biz, and the film industry, again, it used to be when I first started and I did features, you'd be looking at like 50 to 60 sets to shoot for a 1.5 to 2 hour movie. Now you're looking at sets in the range of 172 sets, for a feature film, because it's just boom, boom, boom. They move in and out, so quickly. And they've compressed time. So, but they still have more prep time than TV. TV is now, the expectation for streaming is very, very high. It's feature film quality. I mean, you get feature A-list actors working in streaming. It's the same to them as it is a feature. And in some ways, it tells a longer and better story because it's not a beginning, middle, and end. It's actually, chapter by chapter, it describes things. So that's great. But the mentality of production is that, oh, this is TV, so we'd like to pay you less and pack in more into a 12-hour day than is humanly possible. So the challenge with streaming is that I've said several times, I don't understand how a junior set decorator can be successful in streaming, because again, I have a different level of detail. I'm a feature film decorator, so I don't let go of my standards. But I just feel like in order to be of feature film quality, you have to have the experience. You can't just be somebody who's had 3 years of experience in set decoration. You don't have the contacts, you don't have the ability to even understand what it is you're trying to achieve in such a compressed period of time. I know that sounds complex, but it's time. It's, the speed that streaming is produced right now would blow your mind. It's incredibly fast.
Do you have a favorite genre of anything to work on?
I pride myself on being exceptional at all of the genres of set decoration. And the reason that I feel that way about what I do is because I've traveled, I continue to travel. I study, I'm a curious person. So research is something that is, it's an ongoing sort of ideas in my head are constantly blooming. I read a lot. I think reading is incredibly important. So I think I've enjoyed doing the futuristic fantasy, love it, historical. I love the combination of it. I'm not too keen, to be honest, on contemporary. I've done plenty of high-end, I did the 50 Shades, the two 50 Shades movies, and that was a lot of fun because I had just finished, a couple of years of action films, Batman versus Superman, and it becomes a lot of crates and barrels of men crashing into crates and barrels or smashing into buildings or whatever. And I was really, it was good fun to do 50 Shades, all high-end fantasy, aspirational, like what does a West Coast billionaire decorate his penthouse with. But that, it was fun, but I wouldn't want to be, shoehorned into, okay, she just does contemporary high end, or, I want to be able to read a script and go for it and just, delve into it. I mean, I've done everything from first century Jerusalem right up to, 2080, I think was 2080. That's pretty far in advance. Yeah.
How would you describe yourself as a set decorator?
Um, wow, that's a good question. I would say that I'm a set decorator that supports the creative vision of the project, and I will protect the creative integrity of the project, to the best of my ability. And sometimes that means that I might come up against the money people, a little bit, because they're willing to, many times they're willing to downgrade the vision just to save a few nickels, and it doesn't bode well for film. And I have seen some pretty shoddy streaming in the last couple of months. Interesting scripts that have been compromised by the money that's and the sets are just abysmal, and they ruin the acting performance that's going on as the foreground, because the background is just not believable. And so there's a lot of producers out there that do not care about the visual, and they will attack that budget and make the movie look like a failure. I'm sorry, but I'm just going to say that. So that's my big beef. So in terms of describing me, I will definitely go to the mat to the best of my ability to create beautiful sets. I mean, when I say beautiful, they could be the grungiest set in the world, but what I mean is authentic sets that are based on the script and the vision of the director and the vision of the production designer. And I will, I will probably be more detail oriented than most decorators. Not most decorators. That's not fair. That's not right. Erase that. I'm a very detail oriented decorator, and it's based on authenticity and research. I love textiles, so I think you'll always notice in the movies that I'm involved with that there's some form of interesting textiles. Like if you look at Batman versus Superman, everyone remembers the drape over the Bat helicopter is made out of this charcoal latex, and it was a massive piece, and it was gorgeous. Yeah, what else can I say about myself? I'm a lot of fun to work with. I think my teams are happy, and that's really important, because we work long hours together. And I encourage my teams to have ownership of what they're doing. Like, their contributions are as important as my contribution, because my contribution is nothing without them, and I really believe that. I just finished working with a really terrific team in Atlanta, and they were so much fun to hang out with. And I don't get to spend that much time with my team because I'm on the move. I'm a high energy decorator, and I think it's very evident that when I come onto a set and work with my team, that I know where and what I want to have done, and how I envision it. And so that's good, because it builds confidence with them, because they know that they're supported. And I think my production designer friends that I've worked with over the years, we continue to work together. So that makes a language of creativity that makes it even more fun, because we get each other. It's like, oh yeah, and this, and then we can do this, and then, oh yeah, this would be great. And that's fun. I'm serious and I'm intense and all of that kind of stuff because of course it's a crazy job. There's a lot of responsibility and there's a lot of moving parts. But I so respect what other departments do, like the construction coordinator and the gang bosses and the painters and the scenics and the like it just goes on and on and on. The wardrobe people, all the people that you have to interact with. Because of course I can't pick a color of an entire room that is, turquoise and the actor was supposed to wear turquoise, so you have to be communicating with all the departments all the time. And so that's another thing that I enjoy doing, seeing how everybody else does their job.
What does a typical day of work look like for you?
Oh my God. um, a typical day of work. Well, my day starts at about 5 o'clock in the morning and in my house with a cup of coffee, and I'm answering all the emails, and I usually send out a long note with notes to all of my team players. So the lead man, the buyers, and the gang bosses. So in a set decoration department, you have the set decorator. You have on a bigger show, you have an assistant decorator and then buyers. I have like three buyers usually full time. And then I have a lead man. Sometimes I've had two lead men. And under the lead man, they have gang bosses. And those gang bosses are in charge of each set that they're working on. And under them are set dressers. Those are the people that do the job of actually installing all of the pieces once they're made and ready to, or rented from a prop house or from antiques or wherever they come from, people's homes, for goodness sake. But in terms of all of that, I send out all the lists of what has to be done. But I also have my own list. Like I have to go visit an upholsterer. I have to go visit a prop builder who's creating a whole control room or a control tower for me. Oh, I have to see how those are going. I have to go see the construction guys, follow up on the painters who are aging a set for me or a whole bunch of furniture. So I have all of these things. Once I finish my coffee and my lists, I get in my car and I'm either heading off to see a vendor, as we call them, or a specialist builder, or I'm going to the stage to see the progress on the building of the set. Or I'm going to the warehouse to see the guys, to see, make sure that they've got everything on the list that are going to go to the sets, or I go directly to set. If we're dressing a set, I might go directly there, see how the guys are doing, and go visit all three sets. Or I might be going to the office to get on a Zoom meeting. I might be back to back to back Zoom meetings all day long with the executives and the director and the or I'll see the production designer and have a meeting with them. So I mean, it could be any and all of those things, but my day starts really at about 5 o'clock in the morning and I end by about 8 o'clock at night. And usually, I get home, make myself some dinner, walk my dog, hang out. But I usually do a little bit of homework at night too. It's a pretty intensive, there's a period of time in a film where you are immersed so heavily in what you're doing. It's pretty all encompassing.
Couple last questions on you before I move into some of your work. Um, when you're off the clock and you're watching stuff, how has being a set decorator impacted the way that you view stuff?
Well, some people enjoy sitting beside me while I'm watching that film, and some people do not. um, I can't separate what I do from watching a film. And like I said to you earlier, I've seen some absolutely beautiful scripts be ruined by bad production design that, from the looks of it, to me, has been choked off financially. And it's, um, it's hard to say whether the person in charge um, didn't have the talent or whatever. You can definitely see that there wasn't the money. So I'm also the person that will say, oh, we've just walked onto a set that we're obviously going to blow up in the next scene, because I can see that it's barely put together or whatever. But yeah, I watch shows. I not only am I critical, I'm also celebratory. Like when I see incredible production design, it rocks my world. Um, I'm supportive of that too, of course. I mean, and I see beautiful, beautiful projects. And it inspires me. It's like there's somebody who, there's a group of people, a team of people who really cared and gave it their all, and it's beautiful. And not only is it, the production design is gorgeous, the lighting, everything came together and it was magical. The costumes, they communicated with each other. Everybody had a vision that was singular. And like you can look at things like lately Dune, or you can look at Nightmare Alley, or last year News of the World. There's just so Jojo Rabbit, love Jojo Rabbit. Just the production design on that was definitely singular. I thought that was jaw-dropping. It was really beautifully done. Yeah, so there's so much that I see. I'm a member of the Academy, and I get to see so much beautiful work, and just rock star quality effort, all across the board. So yeah.
What advice would you give to somebody who wanted to go into set decoration?
I would definitely, if I was in high school, I would definitely be taking every single history course that I possibly could, and definitely into university as well. I would definitely be into crafts of some sort, whether you were a paint, crafts and arts. And you don't have to be an artist, but whether you build birdhouses or just start small and go big. How things are made, learn how things are made, learn how engines are made. Look at your bloody fuse panel in your house. Understand what the technical aspects of daily living are like in your own world, and then move out from there, because that's what you're being asked as a set decorator to create, is what is life like in that script, in that world. And so the details count, whether it's an electrical panel on the wall, or it's how art is hung in a room can say so much about the character. If it's an uptight corporate person that really doesn't have a feeling for art, that that art is probably going to be very linear and way too high on the wall. Whereas if you're an artistic person, there is going to be more movement and rhythm to the art. You know what I mean? It's not just what the art is, which is important, but how it's hung. And those details are something you need to absorb when you go into like a law office or a university or a science lab. Where do they put their posters? Where do they put their choke hazard posters? Where do they how are hospitals decorated? Those are the details of what you need to have in the back of your head as a decorator, that it just comes to you like that. And then from there, your travels in the world will be like, okay, what does a houseboat in Amsterdam look like? What does a nanny's room look like in a Swiss chalet? Like, these are things that you would have to see sort of examples of extreme wealth or extreme poverty in order to be able to translate that. Does that make sense? And so just going back to, high school and university, history of things, how things are made, any kind of social studies, um, geography, any of those things, those are all, I didn't even like math when I was in high school. I was a failure at it. But budgeting, when it comes to money, I love it because it's like it's got a dollar sign on it. It's like it's important. So learning how to budget. That's important, especially if you start off in really low budget independent pictures and things. You can't just kind of like, well, I got $5,000. I'm just gonna make a film and good luck to me. You've got to be able to allocate that money, manage it. And then I would say in university, I will also think that computers, any kind of anything to do with like Unreal or any of the programs now that are ZBrush, any of those programs. If you're thinking you want to work behind the scenes at all in the business, get into that. SketchUp, all of the standard tools, get those under your belt. Start working now. Yeah, it's I would incorporate both those things for sure.
I think that's a perfect transition into talking about some of your work.
Hmm.
I'm going to start with Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice questions. How did you approach this movie when you first started working on it?
Mm. Um, well, first of all, I had to keep pinching myself because I was going to be doing the Batcave and the Batmobile. I mean, my God, like just that opportunity alone. So how did I approach it? Well, very much, I took my direction from Patrick, and this was our second time working together. Patrick Totopoulos was the production designer. And already when I started the project, he had, interesting enough, sorry, I'm just thinking back to the time now, because it's going back like 8 years now. But there was a lot of concept art already in existence, and Patrick had been working with his concept artists from all over the world, because concept artists can work remotely. It's a very good paying job. Let's just give a hand to concept artists, because they work from everywhere, from Romania to Korea, Russia, wherever. You can go online and search a concept artist and see what kind of style they do, and you can hire them from wherever. So anyway, back to Batman versus Superman. There was a lot of concept art, and we started off with a script, and believe it or not, we probably had 10 different scripts come at us. And so every time you hit it hard, right, you start designing with these ideas and you're looking at the scripts, the differences from, 1 through 7. And we had designed like I, so many different sets that never got shot and got changed. And so it wasn't even, there's a canon with Batman, right? There's some standard things like the Daily Planet. Then there's Bruce Wayne's home, which had been ruined from previous shows. So then there was the whole concept of, okay, well, what would happen if Bruce moved into the summer home that was on the property of the Wayne mansion, but it was by a lake, and then what would that look like? And so, Patrick, there was just this progressive, creative, like you just dip your toe into, well, why couldn't it be mid-century modern? And wouldn't that be interesting if it was? And then there was a color world that Patrick wanted to create. So he doesn't believe in pure black. And you'll notice in that film that even the Batman's costume is not pure black. It's charcoals, and it's all these different textures of textures and tones of charcoal. And that creates an interesting aspect. So we took inspiration from oh my God, I've just forgotten the name of the house. Not Fallingbrook. Anyway, it'll come back to me. We took inspiration from, this just came out of my head. We took inspiration from this mid-century house, and it was all painted in white. So the steel structure and everything went to charcoal. And then all of the colors of the leathers and everything that I selected within the interior of the house, even though they were the traditional Bruno chairs, etc., that you would see, they had more tones of deep greens and rich tans, etc., because we wanted it to have a manly feel, but not just go to the straight traditional black. And I think Zack Snyder had a lot of influence on the artwork in that house. But there were great opportunities as we went along. Like they wanted to do the headquarters of Wayne corporate headquarters. Mm-hmm. And I came up with this idea, went to Zach, and I said, hey, wouldn't it be great if we could have Bruce Wayne's father and grandfather, like portraits in the corporate boardroom? And Zach loved that idea. And he completely went to town and cast the people that were going to be the dead dad. And then I had those portraits. We found some lookalike crew members and took their shots. And then the artist went in, the painter went in and created these portraits, and we hung them. So the approach for each of the sets, oh my gosh, let me see. We basically wanted the corporate headquarters of the bad guy to be like a Google interior. So, you do all the research on what do Google headquarters look like. And we had a great time. We put in a basketball court. We had these green lawns, and all the furniture looked like rocks made out of wool felt, and then I had a great deal of fun creating the machine that held up the piece of kryptonite. Mm-hmm. That was custom built to make it come out like it was this evil, thing. And then the whole joke was, fooled you. It's benign. It can't hurt you. But that was an expensive piece of technology. And literally it was Zack Snyder drew on a piece of paper, or on a whiteboard, I think it was. Yeah, it was on a whiteboard. He said, well, I want it to kind of look like something like this. And he drew this little stick thing and a dome thing. And you stick your hand in and you can't touch it directly. And so you have to be able to pull it out. And, so I literally took the image on the whiteboard and the description that Zach had given me. And I had to go to one of the concept guys, the prop builders. They were illustrators that could draw something, and they came up with several concepts, and Patrick and Zach just discussed it, and they came up with something they agreed with and off I went to find a vendor who could make it, and it all had to operate, etc. So I mean, I don't know how I did it. How we did it as a team. It just, after so many script after script after script, we finally decided on something, and it wasn't a lot of time left to prep that movie, actually. So it was a scramble from start to finish, and there were a lot of sets. But of course, the favorite was the Batcave. It was amazing. And that was something that goes back to Patrick Totopoulos, the designer, and Zach. And in his original meetings with Zach, the things that were important to Patrick was that the Batcave would be like a bat, that everything would be suspended off the ceiling. So there was nothing. All my desks had to be suspended from the ceiling. All of those work tables and everything and in a real set had to be wired. So they had to be engineered so that they could um, hang off of the set. And I created a whole rolling trolley system so that those desks could interchange, and different tasks could be assigned to each of the desks. And that was also something that I specifically was responsible for, because we had this whole warehouse area, or his workshop, and we had to designate each area. So, okay, there's the Batmobile where it gets stored, but then there's the mechanical shop of how how Alfred would repair the car, so that each single area in that space became designated, like, oh, there's diagnostic for the car, and here's where we watch for intruders, and we da 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 da. And then upstairs in the workshop area, it was like, okay, so what does the Batman do? He investigates. He's got a little bit of, he's Mr. Fix-It. He makes his own mask. So each of those desks became a very like a biology, chemistry analysis. Then this is his spy area. Then this is where he mills all of his metal pieces. Very, very detailed. Now, whether you see that in the movie or not, doesn't matter, because the actor came in and was able to move around in the set, make it real.
How
I
did
don't know if I'm answering your questions very well.
No, you definitely are. How did the past of Batman and Superman as characters impact your set decoration?
Well, I mean, I can only say that Zach, I think for Batman versus Superman, Zach was very specifically wanted everything to be made and to be tangible. He didn't want any green screen. He wanted it all to be real. So that put the onus on us to build everything, so that the actor can hold it in their hand. And and then the past stories, or the previous, it impacted us in a way that there were certain things that Zach wanted to destroy from his previous film. And so we had to create an environment where things could be destructed. I think you can watch the film for yourself and see exactly what I'm talking about. And I'm not, there were all kinds of Easter eggs alluding to Wonder Woman, obviously, because we introduced her as a character.
Yeah.
That was fun. And then we also introduced what was happening in the Justice League at the very end. So there were like Easter eggs that were specifically planted at the request of Zach, and then there were things that we came up with along the way and put into the film. So, but in terms of the previous, not Zach Batmans, I think what inspired us the most is to not repeat anything that had happened in the past, like that Patrick's Batmobile was uniquely his own and had very specific characteristics. And I think, Warner Brothers actually had a display of all the Batmobiles at one point, just shortly after the film was released, and you could see very clearly the distinction of the design capabilities of all of the Batmobiles. I mean, the great thing about Patrick's Batmobile is it was fast and you could drive it. It was a race car.
Do you have any favorite memories that stick out to you over the process of making this film?
Batman versus Superman, I had a lot of joy. There was a lot of joy in making that film. Like I said, some of the highlights, just sort of offering Zach like the idea of more of the family connection. I loved doing the Batcave. It was a joy. It was a total joy. And it was challenging. I had to create the desk out of a lighter material because in order to wire these work tables up into the ceiling, we were actually rigging right up into the stage. And because the cave was cantilevered and also supported, the weight of it was supported with wires up to the ceiling, we were limited to all kinds, there's all kinds of science and engineering to make this thing work. But it was such a joy to create. The vendors were amazing. The people that gave us the robotic technologies and things. I just everything about that was just an incredible experience. I think that the best thing about being a decorator and the business is the lifelong learning. You're constantly learning. There's no same day in and day out. And because everybody's best ideas are coming forward, you want to make them come to life. So you're creating prototypes of these incredible machines, whatever it is, every day. It's yeah, I would definitely say that and Total Recall with Patrick were very, very rewarding for the creative input that you put in, because everything you put in came to life in the screen. It really was. It was great.
What's it like working on action films in general, since you also worked on a couple examples, RoboCop and The Incredible Hulk as well? What's
Mhm.
that like for you?
Well, I think significantly you have to anticipate that whatever you're doing in set decoration it interacts with stunt people
Mhm.
and visual and special effects people. So it's either going to be destroyed by a body being thrown against it, or it's going to be blown up by a bomb or a sound wave or a machine gun or guns, or there's going to be knife action into the wall or into the floor or onto the desk or into the desk, or a lamp is going to be thrown or something is going to be broken, so there's all kinds of overlap. So we have to have stunt mats that match the walls. Okay, we have to have a mat that matches the floor, or the very first opening fight, I think, in Batman versus Superman was a warehouse set, where mom gets kidnapped, and so Batman goes to rescue her. And I mean, that entire set, basically every single crate, every rope, every wall had to be specially made so that they could smash into it and or wire it and pull it out of the way or whatever. So it's not, you're, oh, got the sofa in there, I guess my job's done, and walk away. No, it's a dance. It's a dance. So when you're doing an action film, you're going to be watching, previs, because they do an animated version of what the stunt might be or what the action might be. And then you will go and watch the stunt people working out exactly visually for you. Okay, here's the dance on the floor on the stage set or whatever. This box needs to be here. This fact thing needs to be here because they're going to drop kick this, or they're going to come in on wires and fly through this. And so everything has to be prepared, painted, prepped, multiplied by 5, how many times they think they're going to do it. Affects your budget, affects your labor, like how many people you need on the set to reset that to work with people. So it's a very complex, whenever you're doing a stunt or whenever you're doing an effect, it is complicated. Yeah.
Moving to a television series now, I wanted to
Okay.
ask questions about Station 11. What was it like working on that? I know it's very timely topic-wise. So what was it like working on that series?
Well, that's a series that I was very excited to work on because I love the book. I don't know if you've read the book, but it's an incredible story, and like you say, timely, absolutely. And the book was very creepy because
Mhm.
the sense of loneliness and desperation and danger was really, really clear in my mind. So Station 11 was an interesting experience. It was definitely moved away from the book quite a bit.
Mhm.
So I happen to love Michigan because that's where we shot Batman versus Superman. So I have a real connection to Michigan and the sense of the outdoor and the wilderness and all the rest of it. So it was very different. It very, very different sensibility. Um, for me, it wasn't a difficult series to do, but it was challenging that at the time I was shooting in Toronto and it was a very busy city. So it was hard to get crew. I had an excellent crew. My set deck team was excellent. They worked really hard, but it was hard to get extra people. Um, and what can I tell you about that show? Creatively, I mean, I thought the sense of humor in it was interesting. It certainly wasn't in the book, so there was a very different approach.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know, what did you think about Station 11? What stood out for you?
What really stood out to me was the different shifts in time, especially in the very start of the show. I was gonna ask you a question about that. I'm wondering what it was like with the shifts in time and like the the wear and tear over time, because as you can see with the 20 years later shift, you can see how
Mhm.
the world changes. And I was wondering what that was like for you for set
Yeah.
decorating.
Well, as a set decorator, so it became obviously in order to make that work, you have to shoot everything in the new phase, and then you have to go back and and so you give time to all the different departments to age, paint, scenic, distress, blow up, as the case may be, um, in order to create the 20 years later.
Mhm.
So you build the set once, but then you age it to the 20 years later. So for instance, in the golf course, in the pro shop, you you could see that when she was young and she went into to visit him in the pro shop, there was there was still quite a lot on display in terms of it was still a pro shop. And then, 20 years later, when she comes back as an adult, it's all stripped out and it's definitely worn. And yeah. So we shot it basically in a certain amount of continuity. The same with the gas station, which I didn't do. That wasn't my set. That was Jennifer's set. But the airport was a massive thing. So we shot that in present day, and all of the stores were completely dressed and functioning, and the restaurants and everything. And then 20 years later, um, you know, pulled apart and repurposed, and that was the challenge. It was knowing what did you want that set to be 20 years in the future? Like, what were they using that for as they colonized that airport? What did it become? Um, and knowing that in advance so that, you've got your set, like, let's say, for instance, the bar that was the central area. What did that become 20 years in the future? What would you use that same furniture for that they would have incorporated into their, like, obviously then they turned it into their repair and laundry area, and they were growing their hydroponics, and where did all of that equipment come from? And I tried to be very legitimate about what they would use. And if you are never allowed to leave an airport, what do you find in an airport? So, the structures for the hydroponics were like rat king, big giant rat kings that you would probably find in the hangars where they would have all of their mechanical things. So like the big water bottles and water tanks, all of that I think would come out of the back room idea of an airport, that the bowels of the airport that you would never see. Um, and repurposing everything that you did see in the front of house, like all of the books became textbooks for the kids and things like that. So So you have to think forward and backward all the time.
What's it like working on outdoor sets in this show and in other projects of yours, like Jurassic World, Fallen Kingdom versus inside sets? What's that like for you?
Oh my God. Well, that's a good question. On Jurassic World, I was we did everything in Hawaii.
Mhm.
I did not do the British part of it. My friend Tina Jones, who's an exceptional decorator, and I just love her. She did the bulk of the movie in the UK, but everything that was on the island was shot in Hawaii. And um, so the crew, I flew over to London, met with the director and the team and everything. Um, we talked about what would be going on, what sets we would be bringing back to life again. Um, so Jurassic World was going to be rebuilt and recreated. Um, and then we all flew to Hawaii and we were scouting and everything. And they were talking about how there were dinosaurs, these dinosaurs were just killing for no reason. And I turned to Andy Nicholson, the production designer. I said, are we gonna need some dead bodies on the ground here? And he's like, yeah, good point, good point. And because you could do them virtually, in the background. You could, there's no real reason. But in fact, when we brought it up to the director, he said, yes, yes, yes. I want a bronchosaurus that we have to walk around, and we want to see, you want to see dead bodies. So I was put in charge of creating, as I say, the largest coffee tables in the world, because they're dead. They're lying there on the ground. So they were commissioned in Los Angeles, and I had them built in warehouses, and they were made out of styrofoam and latex, and then the bones were carved in Hawaii, just some of the just bare skeletons, and then the assembly outdoors, like you got a 64-foot long brachiosaurus that you have to set up all the ribs and everything and stake them into the ground. You don't want to be moving that 5 times.
Yeah.
Oh, really? I wish that was like 10 feet to the left. That's not what you want to do. So, yeah, so that was really significant, because, when you're, even with a director and a DP, when you're saying, okay, 64-foot brachiosaurus ribs, where would you like that? How are they running by? Because all of the virtual dinosaurs are going to be stampeding by this real thing, plus the people. And that was a lot of like, you know, speculation. So that's quite like scale, obviously, outdoors is a thing. And when you're working in Hawaii, you have to know that it's going to rain on the north side of the shore at 3 o'clock every day. The rain's going to come in and wash all your paint off of your sets. So you have to make sure everything's dry before the rains come. The mud, it's a rainforest. It's freaking, you're hauling this stuff out into a field. There's no easy way to do it, because you want it to look remote. So you can't be taking a 4-wheel drive through the mud, trucking your giant dinosaurs. So you're literally hauling into I thank God I'm not, because I get to be the goddess that points the fingers. But I mean, yeah, we are, not that I do definitely haul. I moved a skeleton head with my onset dresser several times, way deep in a field with the walkie-talkie. 20 feet to the left. Yeah. So that's very different. Very, very different. Working in an environment like Station 11, to your point, when they go out to the cottage, they're surviving in that cottage. We were up north in the middle of winter, about 3.5 hours north of Toronto, in a beautiful part of the world called the Muskokas. normally a summer resort area. And we were in a 150-year-old cottage, which is not heated all winter long. There's absolutely no heat, no electricity. So there we are, and it's winter. So the window to get there, and it doesn't get plowed. So we had to bring in a snow plow to get us as close to the house as we could, drag in all of the furniture, etc., with those gator buggy things. And then get rid of all of the tracks on the snow. Plus you're kind of semi-freezing the whole time in the house while you're dressing. You're wearing, your puffy coat and stuff, and you're trying to decorate. So there's always conditions, like there's always wacky work conditions. The challenge is, this job is not for the faint of heart. I think you have to be a little bit crazy because it's tough. Yeah.
Moving on to another project. I just want to cover all your projects. But there's
good luck.
Moving on to the 50 Shades movies. You worked on two. What was it like working on 50 Shades Darker, and what was it like coming in on the second movie? How did the first movie impact you?
No disrespect to the first movie, but when I was chatting with my friend Nelson Coates, who's the production designer on those two movies, and we've worked together on other projects, and we're, not only are we excellent and long-standing friends, but we're, we have a very strong sense of design, and we talk about it all the time, design. And I said I was not interested in doing 2 and 3 unless we could revision it, because I felt like we could bring more to the table than what was done in the first movie. And he totally agreed. And I said, it's not just little touches, like major touches, especially to the penthouse. And he agreed, and so the two of us co-conspired, actually. We got hired on and we started doing it. We just went for it. And he started reshaping, like within the confines of the actual penthouse, which is based on a real apartment in Seattle. We just sort of took a very serious look at all of the art that was shot in the first movie, all of the furniture that was shot. And I just said, I need to believe that the furniture that's in that house and the art that's in that penthouse is collected by a 34-year-old businessman that, does acquisitions, that this is real. And so we got real serious about West Coast artists from Vancouver all the way down to the south of Mexico. We collected avant-garde, up-and-coming artists, students of the university. Didn't matter, they had to have an angle. We did First Nation art. There was a little bit of everything on West Coast, and it was very specific. And I'm super proud of that. I also was very insistent on a certain level of masculine quality to the set decorator. Obviously, like, this was totally in Nelson and I were totally in cahoots, but my one beef about the first movie was I just could not stand the fireplace in the living room. It was like this little tiny granny fireplace. And I said, it's gotta be long, and it's gotta be big, and it's gotta be multi-millionaire's fireplace in the living room. And Nelson was like, I don't know if I can change that. I mean, that was established in the first movie. I was like, blow it up, let's make it go in. And I also said I hated the stairs in the first movie because they were concrete sided stair, like concrete cement plaster stairs, solid all the way down. I said, how unsexy is that? If a girl's walking down the stairs, you got to have glass sides and see-through stairs or something that. And so Nelson designed a rock star stair for the second version. I mean, it was just gorgeous. Yeah. And so when Erica came, the writer, to review all of the new concepts, like we were all sort of like, because we just went for it, and we were kind of like holding our breath, and she was walking, through all the mood boards and all the materials that, between the fabrics to the tile work to the woodwork, everything that Nelson had done and everything that I'd put it all together in this room. And she was walking through and not saying anything, and we're just holding our breath, and like, and then she said, "I love it. This is amazing." And boom, that was it. Um, and I think she just believed in Nelson's work, my work, all of our work. And we had a great time after that. And I think visually, if you look at the difference between darker and the first one, and also the third one, you'll see an incredible design change from the first to ours. And then from the second one to the third, there's also a very different look. Like darker, we had darker tones all the way through. It was a little bit more sexy, smoky. And then in the third one, when they're getting married and there's, like there's this whole transition, it does get lighter. There's a lot more color happening. There's a lot more sunlight in the show. So yeah, that's also very specific. God, I'm sorry.
Well, what was it like coming back to work on the final film after working on the second one?
Well, so we did them concurrently. In other words, we were shooting them at the same time. So, Monday we're shooting darker, and Wednesday we were shooting free. So it really depended. Yeah, it really depended. Not that we didn't change. The one thing we did do is we shot the red room at the very end of all the filming. I mean, that's for obvious sensitivity reasons and all the rest of it. But again, that room, I had so much fun with it. We added so much, everything that was in there before, I augmented or designed different components, and that was fun. But so mentally, you had to be on top of your game as the decorator, because you'd be shooting something and you would have to be really aware, okay, this is actually in darker, so there's just like little differences in each of the sets that you would know the difference between the darker and the free. So we might be shooting like a scene out of the darker, and then the next week we'd be shooting the wedding from free. You'd be all over the place.
Do you have any favorite memories from that project?
Lots of great memories. So we shot the Colorado house, the lodge up in Whistler. And well, actually, I don't want to talk. I can't. Sorry, we won't be able to talk about that. That's private. That's a. I don't know if I can say anything about that. So,
Okay.
But no, lots of good memories. I really enjoyed shooting the wedding, doing the wedding scene, because that was I brought in white lilac trees that hung in the center of all of the seating plan. And then I had to custom design the crystal lanterns. Those got shipped in from India. They were, that was a nail biter. I was afraid they weren't going to arrive in time, but they were just gorgeous when we hung them up, hanging out of the trees. And I absolutely adored the masquerade party. That was so much fun to do, because the table designs were with the peacock feathers and the Venetian masks and all of that. That was fun. Yeah.
Last project I'm going to cover before asking you like a final question. What was
Mhm.
it like working on Voyagers, and how did the location of space impact the set design?
Wow. Well, Voyagers was a very interesting project. We shot that on location in Bucharest, Romania.
Wow.
And yeah, and Scott Chambliss, obviously a production designer who is no stranger to spaceships. I mean, he did Guardians of the Galaxy, he did Star Trek. He's got a long history of sci-fi in his world. And so he had a very, um, he wanted this spaceship to look like something in the future that would be what is today's modern yacht, like a, you know, like a cruise ship sort of yacht.
Yeah.
Uh, so he did not want it to look in any way like the typical shape of a spaceship, or he wanted it to be all squared off, and that also created that claustrophobia that we wanted with all of those hallways that were super narrow.
Yeah.
We built a long hallway that was over 250 feet long, so literally you could get that long run and the camera could go from one end and see how narrow that was. That was really very specific. So his vision was that everything was behind panels. So contrary to a lot of spaceships that that we know and love, where you see all the pipe work and all of we only showed that when the kids got into the bowels of the ship, then you could see the inner workings. And then other than that, it was all of these smooth panels. The challenge for us was working in Bucharest. They have never shot a sci-fi film before.
Mhm.
So materials are hard to come by there. And just they're craftspeople that are used to doing like period films and things like that. But when it comes to sci-fi, they didn't really get they didn't really understand how I mean, when I say they didn't understand, they had not had the experience of building a spaceship before. So there were quite a few things that were simply just straight up standard. You need to have large screen monitors, and you need them to work and things like that. So it's a country of a bit of scarcity. So I had to import from Hungary a lot of things. I was able to use a lot of materials from several other sci-fi films um, that helped me because it is a small country, and manufacturing things took a lot of time. It was challenging, but I think he achieved it. And it's a very convincing spaceship. Um, I love the black control room with the central panel. Yeah, there was a lot of really successful. Um, I had such a good time. The canteen was the major thing with the blue drink, and I got inspired actually on a trip to Budapest to look at prop houses. I saw this machine that has like makes pancakes for you when it's in the restaurants, and you push the button, one pancake, it squirts out the pancake, and it goes down this little trolley and it comes out, because we really wanted everything in the spaceship had to be recycled, right? So everything, your skin particles, everything had to be converted into food, water, how to hydrolyze water and all of that. So I love the mechanics of that. And I also, so we recreated that into like a weird, soy pancake thing. And then as far as the blue drink goes, we wanted the mechanics of, everything is dispensed automatically. The kids don't have any control. That was the point. They don't have any control over anything. It just comes out, you drink it, and then it goes away. So the idea of the blue drink being on like a sushi boat ride came up, and that's what I literally did. I found a sushi track, and we we built that machine so that it dispensed automatically and circled around. So those were a lot of fun.
That's so cool. Okay, last two questions for you here. And this is one of my favorite questions to ask everyone I interview. If you could give your past self a piece of advice, what would it be?
Worry less and enjoy it more.
That's
That's it.
that's and then finally, can you tell us any projects that you're currently working on?
So I just finished doing some reshoots in Atlanta for Ms. Marvel, which is going to be launched, I think, in I believe it's going to be the fall this year. A great series. And I did a little bit of reshoots for another Marvel show called She-Hulk. And that's coming out, I think, in the fall as well. The film that I'm moving on to currently, it's untitled and I can't tell you much, but it is going to be shot in Hawaii again. And it's a period series, limited series set in the 1700s. So,
Yay! Well, that's perfect.
yay!
Thank you so much for
Yay!
my
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.